Now, how does Bitcoin come into any of this? Well, working a job doesn't always leave you completely broke. You do sometimes have a little bit of extra money. And we made an experiment about 6 years ago, and we put some money into Bitcoin and we let it sit there. And 6 years later, that Bitcoin was valued at over 1,100% higher than what we put it in, which is an insane amount of return for the Bitcoin. I did some research to see how Bitcoin does over time. I did it from 2020. So by the end of 2020, there was a total of $539 billion in Bitcoin. By the end of 2021, there was $1.27 trillion in Bitcoin. I don't know if you understand that, but that's more than double the amount in 1 year put into Bitcoin. By the end of 2022, it had reached what they call the Bitcoin winter, when the price went very low. Now, Bitcoin is very volatile. And what volatile means is that it goes up and down in price very quickly. Traditional stocks and traditional bonds do not go up and down in price that fast. The volatility of Bitcoin is extremely scary, but you have to get used to it because that's actually going to be your best friend when it comes to the buying times. Just like I'm talking about now, at the end of 2022, the Bitcoin price at the end of the year went back down to $317 billion in Bitcoin. That's even worse than 2020, but it gave everyone an immense opportunity to buy, which they did, and they bought. At the end of 2023, it was $1.2 trillion total amount of Bitcoin bought, which is insane. And now, by the end of 2024, it's $1.85 trillion, I believe, ending the year at its highest point of $108,000 per Bitcoin. Here's some facts about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is digital capital. And what capital is something that's not just a currency like the dollar or the euro. Capital is something that is physical and tangible that actually appreciates and gets more valuable over time. So like real estate, your houses will get more valuable over time, your land will get more valuable over time, or like gold, that'll get more valuable over time. Those are examples of capital. Now, Bitcoin is the exact same type of thing. Bitcoin is literally the most infallible way of keeping capital because, and let me tell you why. There's only ever 21 million Bitcoin ever in existence. Which means, in comparison to the dollar, which is the strongest currency in the world, the dollar in the past 100 years has lost 99% of its value. Bitcoin can never lose any of its value because there's only ever 21 million Bitcoin. They can't make any more Bitcoin and they can't subtract any more Bitcoin. Currency, what we call fiat currency, like dollar bills or the euro, they can just print more of those. And the more you print, the lower the value goes. When you're mining for gold and you find gold, it's valuable because you don't find a lot of it all the time. If I was mining for dirt isn't valuable because I can go into my backyard and just grab some dirt. Anyone can get some dirt. The more you have of something, the less valuable it becomes. The fact that 21 million is the total amount of Bitcoin that will ever be in existence means that it can only go up in value the more people put money into it. Why is that a good thing? It's a good thing because when you're looking at your Bitcoin, you're not really looking at it as a currency, although it could be looked at as a currency and could be used as a currency much more efficiently than regular currency. You're looking at Bitcoin more because it's capital, just like the real estate or the gold. Let's say that you own some property, and that property you've had for many, many years, maybe 30, 40 years. It's down in the Florida Keys. It's a great property. It's appreciating in value. It's went from maybe even $100,000 in the 80s that you bought it for, and now it's worth $5 million. That is some awesome capital. Like all you did was own the house, and now you have all this extra money because the original price of $100,000 is now valued at $5 million. This is all hypothetical. And then guess what happens? A hurricane comes through and completely destroys your $5 million house. And now you have no $5 million house, not even the $100,000 it cost in 1980 to buy the house. Where are you then? That capital doesn't hold up very well. That's not very secure. That's a risk to take. Here's another idea. Gold. You invest in gold. You buy a lot of gold. You love the gold. There's not a lot of gold on Earth, and the value of gold is still pretty good. Let's say you want to move that gold from one place to another. You have to hire people to physically move your gold. Let's say you have $1 billion in gold, and you want to move that gold from point A to point B. You literally have to hire people to package it, hire guards to guard it. As you take it wherever you're going, there's a chance you're going to have to pay tax on the gold that you're moving. You're going to have to pay shipping on the gold that you're moving. Also, in order to change that gold from gold to fiat currency or money, printed money like the dollars, it's going to cost money to do the transfer. So all of it is losing value because of all of these hard to transfer things. Imagine you're in a war-torn country. All of your money that you have in the world is in the banks there. And that country just locks all the banks. That country just decides, like Cuba. There was the thriving businesses in Cuba. That country decides that when Castro got in, they're just going to take over the good businesses, and now it's going to be the government's. Now you don't even own the thriving business anymore. And all the shareholders who owned shares in your business no longer have any equity in anything. If something is on earth like that, it can be manipulated by other people. People have been able to play the game. People have been able to do many things to continue to gain wealth and keep investments going well. But the best long-term storage of capital that I've ever seen, and the most risk-free, is Bitcoin. I have some statistics on this too. Bitcoin private keys, by the way, your private key in Bitcoin is your online wallet address. So your Bitcoin private key, nobody knows but you. You know the private key. It's a 256-bit number. This means there are 2 to the 256 possible private keys that people could check, or approximately 10 to the 77th combinations. I don't think you understand how astronomical that number is. That's even more than a trillion. That's like a million trillion, a billion trillion. That's insanely more than a nonillion. In order for a computer to come in and hack your Bitcoin address and find your Bitcoin address, it would literally take billions of years for a computer to attempt it. Even the new Google chip would still take billions of years to be able to do it. It says even the fastest supercomputer on Earth would take billions of years to attempt a fraction of these combinations. For example, if a computer could try, by the way, it can't, but if a computer could try 1 trillion keys per second, it would still take about 10 to the 51 years to check half the possible keys. It would take 10 to the 51 years to check half of the possible keys. Do you know how much time 10 to the 51 years is? Literally more than 100 billion trillion years. The encryption on Bitcoin is so high that unless technology makes a major advancement very quickly, no one's going to be able to hack your Bitcoin in the next, who even knows how many years. Say you're in a war-torn country. Say you want to just move somewhere. Unless you give away your Bitcoin private key, no one can ever actually take your Bitcoin from you. Your Bitcoin is always going to be with you. If you remember that key in your head, you could literally walk into prison, sit in prison for 20 years in a war-torn country, and then come right back out and have all of your wealth back. All of it back because you remember your Bitcoin key. Your house could be completely destroyed. All of your gold can be completely stolen. All of the real estate you own could be completely taken by the government. It could be totally gone in an instant. But if you know your Bitcoin private key, it'll always be there. Here's the perks of having Bitcoin. You can trade it any time of the day or night, which means if you want to buy some, you can buy some any time of the day or night. It's not like a traditional stock or ETF where you have to usually buy the entire price of the stock. You can literally buy $10 worth of Bitcoin if you want. Right now, it's valued at $100,000, but you can buy $10 worth of it right now if you want. Here's some other reasons to buy Bitcoin. Major corporations and governments are getting involved in buying it, but the good news is governments can't control it. My Bitcoin exists with me on my personal Bitcoin key, so if that's the case, then that literally means if the United States decides they want to put a whole bunch of regulations on Bitcoin, I can move to another country and still have all of my money. And it's still going to be the same value because Bitcoin is decentralized. The entire world can use it at the same value. Would you want to put your money in a bank that barely gives you any kind of a return, or would you want to put it in Bitcoin that gives you, on average, by the way, a 60% return every year? 60% on average? That's insane. Now, it's not going to be like that forever the more people continue to put money into it, but literally 60% return per year, that is out of control. I got my good job. I invested in mutual funds. I invested in a Roth IRA. I made sure to do the things to set myself up for retirement, which, by the way, waiting to spend all that money until I'm 55 sounds like a total drag. Wasting my whole life spending time at a job sounds like a huge drag just to be able to spend the money when I'm old and crippled. Nah, come on. I want to help people now with the money. I want to spend the money on the things I want for my family now. I did some investments with mutual funds and Roth IRAs. I just did the math. After 4 years, Bitcoin has returned us 381% of our money back. The mutual funds, after 4 years, have returned us 16% of our money back. 16%. Now, I know there's compounding interest. A lot of people are going to talk about compounding interest, and compounding interest is real and very awesome. That 16% in a couple more years is going to be much higher. I understand that. But Bitcoin also compounds as well. The volatility of Bitcoin is 60% more every single year. And if you keep adding money into it monthly, it goes up insane amounts every single year. Not only because it raises 60% per year, but because you're actually putting in a certain amount every single month. After this, I realized I'm putting a whole bunch of money into something that's barely helping me. Because you know what? There's two things in America that are making us more poor. The first thing is inflation, which is at least 5% every single year. And the next is devaluation of the dollar, which is at least 10% every single year. So combine those two, that's 15%, which means you are just saving money in a bank account from your job. If your job is giving you extra money, that's great. And you're saving it in a bank account, you are losing 15% of the value of that money every single year. If you put that money into a mutual fund like I did, I made 16%. But minus the 15%, I've literally in 4 years overcome the inflation and the devaluation of the dollar by 1%. 1%. If you invest in the S&P 500, you'll only get a couple percent average per year higher than the inflation rate and the devaluation of the dollar, which, by the way, may I remind you, the dollar is the strongest currency on the planet, and it's still 99% devalued than what it was 100 years ago. What that literally means is that every 10 years that you save money and don't do anything with it, it's worth half the amount. So something has to change. There has to be something that fixes the broken money problem, and that's Bitcoin. Did you know that literally in 2024 alone, we made 130% on our Bitcoin? Like when I said your Bitcoin gives you an average of 60% per year, that's including the bad years where it gives you negative amounts. Like Bitcoin is such an insanely high return that like so many people, not just like people like me telling you here on YouTube that Bitcoin's good, like people tell all their friends, and then those people tell business owners, and those business owners start listening, and those business owners tell other business owners, and and then government gets involved, and the government's talking about it. Now everyone's talking about it, and guess what? As people start putting more money into it, Bitcoin is going to go crazy. Absolutely crazy. So here, when we bought was $12,000. It is now $100,000. By the end of 2025, the predictions are that it's going to be $250,000 or more. By the end of 2028, the predictions for Bitcoin are that they are going to be $1 million per Bitcoin. That is literally 10 times the amount more than we have right now. Bitcoin has literally been recognized by the SEC, which are the people who literally set up the stock market and help control it. It has been recognized as a new asset class. There hasn't been a new asset class recognized by the SEC or any market in 80 years. So this is a big deal. Also, strategic reserves. Many countries are making Bitcoin their currencies, and they're making strategic reserves of it. You better buy Bitcoin before Donald Trump gets inaugurated on January 20th. I'm telling you, because they have a bill in place right now to sign into law that is going to purchase 200,000 Bitcoin every single year for 5 years until they reach $1 million. And that is all going to go into a Federal Reserve of Bitcoin. Once America does it, everyone does what America does. Russia's going to do it. China's going to do it. The UK is going to do it. Everyone's going to start doing this and giving themselves a national reserve of capital. And it's the best capital on the planet, as we've already discussed. Bitcoin could reach $250,000 by the end of the year, or it could reach $250,000 by the end of the month. It all depends on what the different people are going to do. But the point is, even if it reaches $250,000 by the end of the year, that is literally a 150% increase. All that to say this: if you don't have a lot of money to invest in other places and you want to get wealth soon and quickly, Bitcoin is the way to go. Put it in, never sell it, and you will become a very wealthy person within literally 5 years. All you need to put in is $10,000, and within 5 years, you'll have hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. This is the best plan. And by the way, I'm not a financial advisor. This is just awesome things that I think are good. Buy as much Bitcoin as you can, save it for as long as you can, and start your own business to then fund your lifestyle and buy more Bitcoin.